Ever feel like life kind of throws you a curveball? You know, one of those moments that leaves you feeling stuck?
Yeah, we've all been there.
Well, that's what we're diving into today, this feeling of being stuck. And to help us unpack it, we're turning to Stuck on the Couch by James H. Kirklin II.
Right, not literally stuck, of course, although James uses the couch as a pretty powerful symbol in the story.
Exactly. He even talks about how couches have played this like recurring role throughout his life, which I thought was so interesting.
Yeah, from childhood to starting his own family, it's like this object that takes on all these different meanings.
Totally. But before we get too comfy on the couch, let's jump into James's story.
Sounds good to me.
So James starts by describing this pivotal moment, the night his wife tells him she's moving out.
And he talks about how blindsided he felt, right? Like he had no idea this was coming.
Totally. But what I found really interesting was how he reflected on that moment later on.
Yeah, he does a lot of reflecting in this book.
He does. Like, he talks about the conversations they should have had, the questions he wishes he had asked.
The things he wishes he had said.
Exactly. And how he just kept replaying these what-if scenarios in his head.
Which I think we can all relate to. It's easy to get stuck in those what-ifs.
Totally. But instead of dwelling on the past, James uses it as a way to understand his present.
Right, it's like he's looking in the rearview mirror, not to dwell on his mistakes,
Yeah.
but to learn from them.
Exactly. And he's brutally honest with himself about his role in the breakdown of his marriage.
He talks about looking in the mirror, literally and metaphorically, and not liking the person he saw.
It's like he had this realization that he had to confront some hard truths about himself.
Absolutely. And one of those hard truths was his tendency to avoid difficult conversations.
Which, let's be honest, we've all done in relationships, right? Avoid those tough talks, hoping things will just magically work themselves out.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's so much easier to just sweep things under the rug.
Right. But as James points out, that only works for so long.
Exactly. And he talks about how ironic it is that while their household seemed to run smoothly on the surface, underneath, their relationship was starving for real, meaningful conversation.
It's like they were living two separate lives. And speaking of separate lives, James starts talking about ravens in this really interesting way.
And I was like, ravens? Like the birds? But no, he's not talking about actual ravens. He's using them as a metaphor.
Right, so these ravens represent these unexpected sources of help and guidance that appeared during his darkest moments.
It's actually a really beautiful analogy drawn from the biblical story of Elijah. God provided for Elijah during a drought by sending ravens with food.
And these ravens weren't always people, were they? Sometimes they came in the form of, like, job opportunities or financial help when he was struggling.
Yeah, like that unexpected job offer in Alabama. Talk about a raven.
Oh, right, out of the blue.
Or that friend who sent him $200 when he was basically broke and stranded. I mean, talk about those little miracles, right?
It's almost like whenever he hit a wall, a new door would open, often from the most unexpected places. And that's the thing about being stuck. Sometimes we need to be open to help from unconventional sources, to recognize those unexpected blessings, even if we don't feel deserving. Totally, like be open to the possibility. But it wasn't just about those external ravens. James also talks about how he had to actively start taking control of his life again.
Right, he had to meet those ravens halfway. He talks about this important difference between adapting and acquiescing. Like, adapting is actively changing your approach to a situation. You're being flexible, resourceful, but staying true to yourself. Acquiescing. That's passively accepting things as they are, even if it means compromising your values.
So adapting is about being the architect of your own life, even when the blueprints get thrown out the window.
Love that.
And that's exactly what James chose to do. He dove headfirst back into work, reconnected with his faith, and started finding joy in simple things again.
He talks about how he could have easily just given up, right? Accepted his situation and let it define him.
Oh, for sure. It would have been so easy to just stay stuck.
Right. But instead, he chose to rebuild, piece by piece. He didn't try to do it all at once. He focused on small, consistent changes, those daily wins that start to add up over time.
It's like the saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You don't need to have everything figured out. Just focus on that first step, then the next one, and build momentum from there.
Right. And he uses a really powerful analogy of runners in a race. He talks about how some runners give up right before the finish line.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
Right. Letting exhaustion, self-doubt, fear of failure get in the way.
And he asks this really thought-provoking question. He says, how can we apply that to our own goals, our own lives?
Are we giving up too soon?
Are we letting those inner critics hold us back from crossing our own finish lines?
It's a powerful question. And he goes on to say how those struggles, even the ones that felt like failures, ended up fueling his growth. They forced him to confront his weaknesses, learn new skills, and ultimately become more resilient.
It's like those challenges were the fertilizer for his personal growth. It reminds me of that quote, "The obstacle is the way." Have you heard that one?
100%.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all grit and determination.
Huh?
He also talks about the importance of his faith during those dark times, how leaning on something bigger than himself gave him strength. He talks about this idea of God working the night shift, meaning even when he felt alone, there was a force greater than himself guiding him toward a brighter future.
I love that. God working the night shift. It's a powerful image that even in the darkest moments, even when we can't see it, something is working in our favor.
Right. And it's not that he didn't have moments of doubt. He's very open about those times when his mind went to some pretty dark places, battling self-doubt, feeling like he'd let everyone down.
He even talks about being envious of his family, seeing them moving on with their lives while he felt stuck.
Yeah, like why them and not me?
Totally. It's a very human emotion, but it can be so easy to get trapped in that cycle of negativity. It's like those thoughts can really pull you under.
Well, absolutely. But James talks about how he started to recognize those negative thoughts as just that, thoughts. Not facts, but just these fleeting patterns he had the power to change.
So it's about like taking control of your thoughts instead of letting them control you.
Exactly. He calls it cognitive recalibration, intentionally sifting those negative thought patterns to more positive, empowering ones.
Yeah. Okay, so instead of "I'm stuck," it's "what can I learn from this?" Something like that.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership of our thoughts, attitudes, and ultimately our lives. He also talks about leaning on his faith, remembering God's promises, and trusting in a plan bigger than himself.
Finding that strength to keep going when it feels like there's nothing left, it's a powerful thing. But one thing that really stuck with me was how James talked about the importance of stillness, of facing those uncomfortable truths about himself.
He describes those couch moments as a form of forced reflection, like a timeout.
Yeah, like a forced reset.
Right. A chance to reassess priorities, confront his past, and ultimately rediscover his purpose. It reminds me of that feeling when you're like forced to slow down after an injury. It's frustrating, yeah, but it gives you
Yeah.
space to think about what your body's trying to tell you.
It's like he needed that space, both physically and mentally, to process everything that had happened, to strip away distractions and just be present with his thoughts and emotions.
Exactly. And that's when those aha moments can happen. Remember how he talked about being stuck on the couch as punishment as a kid?
Oh, yeah.
It's like those early experiences might have shaped how he saw the couch later in life.
Interesting. So it went from punishment to stagnation to a place of introspection and growth. Full circle.
It shows the power of reframing experiences, right? What we once saw as negative can become a catalyst for change. It's all about perspective. And speaking of perspective, he also talks about the importance of gratitude, even when things are tough.
Oh, absolutely. Gratitude is huge.
He talks about actively looking for things to be grateful for, no matter how small.
Even when it feels like there's nothing, there's always something.
Always. It's about shifting your focus. Instead of dwelling on what's wrong, look for what's right. And that's where those ravens come in again.
Right, those unexpected blessings and opportunities, like that unexpected job offer in Alabama.
Every time he hit a wall, a new door would open, often from the most unexpected places.
It's like the universe was trying to tell him something, right?
Totally. It's a testament to the power of resilience, of never giving up, trusting that even when you can't see the path, there's a plan unfolding. So if you were to write a chapter about this season in your own life, what would you call it? What are your couch moments? What ravens have shown up unexpectedly?
That's something to think about. James's story is a powerful reminder that even when we feel stuck, there's always hope. There's always a chance to rediscover our purpose, find resilience, and create a more fulfilling life. We just have to be willing to take those first steps. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Stuck on the Couch. We hope you found it insightful.